Oh, good. Okay. Looking to do anything to that?
Okay. Let you go first, then we.
No.
Janice, can you hear us all right?
I can hear you.
Hear you.
Okay.
Have to sign them.
And there's Penny and Ed.
There's a couple of names that I would like to sign, and then we'll figure it out.
And there's Ed.
Another person might be- If you don't have. And it would be, but just a DH plus A invoices, I do need those signed, and that's subtract 181.
Are we all set, Cheryl?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Right-hand corner, full screen.
Hi, guys.
Hi, everybody.
We have a
Hi.
good turnout. And it is 5:06, so I am going to call to order the Needham Housing Authority monthly board meeting, the Board of Commissioners. And I will start by calling the roll. Rich Foster is here.
Jim Flanagan is here.
Ed Scheidler is here.
Penny Kirk is here.
Janice Bennett is here.
And we have a quorum. Great.
Yeah,
And I just.
What,
gonna note
Penny?
for the record,
looking good.
Oh, thank you.
Can you put the, I'm gonna just note for the record that a public notice of this meeting was posted with the clerk of the town of Needham on November 15th, 2024, setting forth the date, time, place, and manner of this meeting. And we'll start the agenda. And start with announcements from the chair. We do have one announcement, as they say here, matters that could not be reasonably anticipated in advance of the meeting. I'm very pleased to tell everybody here that this afternoon, we received the fully executed and approved executive director contract for the next 3 years for our fearless and wonderful executive director. So congratulations, Cheryl.
Thank you very much.
Looks like you're stuck with us for a while.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Jim.
and Cheryl's one of our own, you know, and it's great this will happen. And also this contract was signed by the Ed Augustus, the Secretary of the Housing, the Livable Communities. So that's, you know, that's maybe you have that frame to put it up here on the wall there. So
Thank you so much.
there you go. All right, we'll start with resident community input. Do we have any input? And let me get the attendee up here. How about anybody in the room for starters here? Go ahead, Ross, our president of the Linden Tenants Association.
Very much. There might be here.
Oh, no, if you just sit there, the owl will hear you.
Right.
You want to make sure that everybody else hears them too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm Ross Donald, 25 H Chambers Street. And let's see, trying to establish some lines of communication. It's great to be recognized. Thank you for the letter, Cheryl. And we want to capitalize on that. We have a role to play here. You know, we're going to do our best and be positive contributors. It's interesting reading the language. One of our roles is to see the benefits of having an LTO. So that seems to imply that we want to be positive, we want to be offer beneficial solutions. So, but we have a lot of questions. There have been some break-ins. We brought up some of these matters in a meeting with Cheryl, and we'd like to have a regular monthly meeting. So we'll have the November monthly meeting in the first 2 weeks of December and get catch up and read. We'd like to hear some conversation at the board level about the surveillance cameras. It used to be a discussion, you know, and it sort of petered out because I guess nobody was watching it. Now we don't have any complaints on that regard, you know, when bringing it up at the meeting. Cheryl said there's a lot of issues with the surveillance cameras that don't work. So we don't have a complaint. If it's acknowledged that it's not working, then it's, you know, maybe there's going to be a follow-on response on the part of the board to oversee these things. It's great to see the parking lot at Linden Street lined We'd like to have some work, some attention paid to Chambers Street, parking lots, pavements and so forth. At the same time, I'll commend the maintenance people for working on the steps and the railings. And I had a talk with Tony and was really impressed with him because with concrete work, yeah.
Yeah, that's us. Somebody's
With
at the door.
with concrete work, what you have to do is prepare it, get off all the loose dust and everything. And then you often have to seal the exposed concrete, because if you put new concrete against the old concrete is just going to absorb all the moisture from the new concrete, and it's going to be very weak. It won't hold. So he seemed to be aware of a lot of it's a chemistry experiment, basically. So they seem to know what they're doing, and the work turned out fine. The railings are going in. They need to be finished. A few little details. And I'm glad Cheryl distributed to the board members that visited her last month the annual plan. So we'd like to work on that. That's a good roadmap, if you will. We'd like to work on use of the community space with Lori. We'd like to have an office space as soon as possible for the Residents Association. Really need that sort of thing. And I don't know why we can't look at 164 Linden. We need office space. There's no other space available. Linden Street, 164 Linden was designed for community space. We might consider opening that for it. We're trying to follow the hearings and the decision by the planning board and the department. So we'd like to follow up in that in some way. If you received any response in that, we're not on the list. We're not on their Christmas list. So we'd like to ask you if there's any kind of response, what the status of that is.
It's on the agenda later. It's on the agenda later tonight. Yeah.
Just let you know we're interested.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any comments, Cheryl? Okay, great. Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. I have three main concerns, at least in the limited time that I have available to speak. First one.
Excuse me, can you just say your name? For the record.
I'm Marlene Costa, and I'm treasurer of the Lincoln Chambers Residents Association.
Thank you.
The first concern is, well, obviously, yes, we do need office space because we are not able to use the community room as an office space. It is wholly unacceptable. So we really do need that office space, and hopefully something can be worked out as soon as possible for our meetings to be secure. Now, the issue is, one issue, the representative, that there are no representatives on the commission board for the non-elected representation of tenants. Now, there is a Massachusetts general law statute that provides that there has to be a non-elected position for a tenant. There's no representation for Linden Chambers. I'm well aware that Janice Bennett is an elected officer. She does a great job. She represents Seabeds and Robert Cook community, and she does a great job. However, Linden and Chambers and the 150 some odd people that live there have no representation and have not, to the best of my knowledge, for several years. There was no notice given of the decision, apparently, that the Board of Selectmen, to the best of my knowledge, was petitioned by the chairman or one of the officers of the Needham Housing Authority Board, that it was to be waived, that it was not necessary to have a non-elected tenant to be on the commissioner's board. So currently, there is a statute. There was no notice given that the Board of to the tenants. There was no decision, no notice given that the Board of Selectmen agreed with the petition and said that it could be waived and having no representation whatsoever. So I would like that addressed and remedied because we need representation to have one person, whatever the process is for choosing that individual, But Linden Chambers and the 150 some odd people that live there, they deserve at least one person to represent them on this board, and they are allowed to have that according to Mass General Statute law. Okay, the second issue is, I noticed that on the agenda, we have the hearing issues concerning grievances and hearing officers. So my question is, first of all, who pays the salary of the hearing officer? Are they, do they have a legal agreement or a salary from the Needham Housing Authority or from Driscoll and Driscoll, which is the legal representation, I guess they represent the housing authority. So, who pays their salary? Who is this hearing officer accountable to? Who does he or she report to? Who pays for their salary and who are they accountable to during these? Because they make the decisions if there is a grievance with a tenant. So I think that's something that needs to be explained and, very clearly and concisely to avoid any conflict of interest. So that any person that does have a grievance and goes before an officer gets an impartial hearing. And the third thing I wanted to mention was concerning which is also in the packet, about priority placements for individuals. Obviously, people that are making 80% AMI will be given priority placements, obviously for the obvious financial reasons. However, my question is, for individuals that are saying, how do you define priority as far as they would be offered an apartment at all? Or let's say an apartment was offered to somebody who was medically disabled, for example, who made 30 AMI. If they needed a placement, say on a first floor or a unit that was that was altered for whatever their disabilities may be, what are the rights? Is it the priority for the 80% AMI who would get that apartment that was handicapped accessible, or that they needed to be on the first floor? Or would that mean that the person that makes 30 AMI is on a separate list or number of apartments that would be available? So are there going to be two lists, or just basically how is that priority defined, especially with relation to if they are offered an apartment and they need a first floor apartment or some other accessibility unit? Is it just solely on, well, one is making 80% AMI or 30 or two separate lists, or how is that priority actually going to be implemented? Okay. So those are the three concerns. And again, please keep us in
Great.
mind that we need office space. So I know that's something we need to work out
I
with the executive director.
wrote down all your things, so I got them right here.
Okay, did I respond to her first question?
Yeah. Yes,
Hello.
but just one second before you do, Janice, I just had a question for Cheryl and the tenants association, because you're all here, officers of the tenants association. Have you started to meet regularly with the tenants association?
We met last
Yes.
month.
Right.
That's great, man.
Yes, it was a very good meeting.
And so our plan is to meet monthly, or as often as you would like. So
I'm-
Ross and I are in communication with scheduling the next meeting, which will be the first or second week of December.
So I would suggest that this time at the beginning of the board, since, we've got like an inch and a half thick board packet to get through,
Yeah.
But I only took.
I'm sorry, I'm not complaining. I'm trying to be supportive. So let me finish what I'm saying, which is, these are all worthy questions. And, but we're not allowing for time for them. This is, the time, this is for just walk-on comments from any resident or something like that. And I wonder if there's a better way we should be doing it before the board meeting than at what we just did there. Not to ignore anything,
No,
but to tackle all
exactly
that sort of stuff.
And Marlena raised some, a very she raised a concern, a complicated concern about I think it's the deconcentration policy that you're referring to.
Was she
Yeah,
having-
medium-
Replacement,
Is that,
Yeah.
so what I'd like to suggest
but
that,
that's
you
in
know,
the packet,
Yeah.
as is the hearing officer.
so what I would like to suggest is that anytime you get your packet before the meeting, you know, and you want to talk, you can call me on the phone or you can send me an email. We can talk to answer so that you can fully understand what it is what's in the packet, so we can address your questions. But I think as a board, we should meet before the board meeting too, once you get the packet, right? And then we can have a meeting about that as well, so you can address your questions before the meeting so that you're fully, you know, if you have, it's complicated. The answers can be complicated and long. So we can have that time to address them
Well,
fully.
I'm going to, 3 out of the 4 questions were complicated, and
Yeah.
maybe even 4 of them, okay.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
I'm
I just-
trying not to get into it right now. And
Yeah.
Janice, I won't forget you, I promise you, okay?
Yes.
But I'm just suggesting that maybe we could work out a way, because these are all good questions. You know, all 4, you were 4, by the way, on my list.
Yeah.
Office space, elected a board member, hearing officer, and priority placement. So that's good. They're all 4
Yeah.
good questions. So
Yes.
let's try before the next board meeting
Sounds good.
you'll get the board packet, and then you can meet ahead of time and make sure any misunderstandings are sort of sorted out, or,
Right.
you know, that, because the tenants association board, that's their role, to have
Yeah.
a deeper role in everything that we're doing here. But on the other hand, we also have to get people home for dinner and, you know, that kind
This
of thing.
meeting.
So Janice, off to you here. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Russ. I just want to say that I'm at your disposal. You've got my email. You emailed me plenty of things, but never an invitation to your meetings. And I'll be happy to sit in and take your questions. But I'm not saying I can attend every single meeting. So, yeah, send me an email and I'm at your disposal. And there have been times that
Yeah, we'll give it to you
to the
separately
High
here.
Rock
Okay?
area and been basically spit on and spit at. And I discussed this with Reg a few years ago, right, Reg?
Many times, actually.
Yeah, and
So-
I haven't been well received. But now that you've got some organization going, maybe things can calm down, and I'll be happy to attend your organization meeting.
Let's go. Anybody else have any tenant comment? Yes, go ahead. No resident.
That's like sign in, what order somebody can talk for those 3 minutes?
It's not a sign-in thing. We just take it, you know, usually the tenants associations first and then anybody else as well after
Well,
that.
can you let us know if that's happening, so.
It's happening right now. Do you have something to say? Go ahead.
Jerry?
I would like to, I'm Dorina Moriarty, should I stand up and?
Actually, if you come up closer, they can hear you in the speakerphone.
Special guest who wanted to attend tonight, he's a United States veteran. And Mr. Jerry Slade from Framingham, but we were discussing the situation at hand. They're very close friends of mine now, and I feel he has some supportive and essential things to share as a former constructionist that you might like to possibly hear
On what topic?
on the redevelopment.
Well, you got 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes left.
So it's like defer my time to him. Would
All
that
right.
be
Sure.
I'm Jerry Slade from Framingham. I'm good friends with that lady, and I've seen her apartment a couple of times. And she told me that, I guess you guys want to knock it all down and redo the whole thing. And I was in construction for quite a long time. House building and with my neighbor. And I looked at her apartment and I can see that maybe not all of them, because I haven't seen them all, but I think most of them could be refurbished. People do it all the time. They'll go into a building, they gut the whole building out, They put new insulation in, they put new appliances, they put new cabinets. And to me, that's a lot cheaper, in my opinion, than tearing it down, having to tear it down and have somebody haul it away. And then with today's prices of building materials to rebuild. So my basic is saying you should look into refurbish. And refurbish these places, because these people have no place to go. Where are they gonna go? If you go in and you tear all these buildings down, you got all these elderly tenants that have no place to go. Nothing. And I think this town should run a lot better than our government, where they kick. In other states, where they kick veterans and elderly out of buildings and put other people in that shouldn't be there. Why don't we just refurbish it? Cheaper.
Well-
It's cheaper. Give these people pay these people to stay somewhere else. While these apartments are being refurbished.
Yep.
That means new insulation, new drywall. Anything that has to do with the construction of inside or the roof of these buildings would be a lot cheaper.
I appreciate your comment. There's been 60 meetings on the subject over 2 years in various different, but we can't really address the results of that 60 minutes right now. But I'm sure that we can get you pointed in the right direction. So thank you very much for your comments. So
You're welcome, sir.
great.
So my name is Tara, I'm sorry, ma'am, excuse me. And I would like to also weigh in on this conversation for my 3 minutes. We have seen.
Where are you, which unit are you with? Oh,
I
you're
just.
not with the housing, you don't live here. Okay,
Yeah, but I used to live in housing and in Framingham and Sudbury and now in Florida. And there's a lot of nice places that are being refurbished for the senior housing. And as far as I know, it's exactly what this gentleman just said. It's worked out. We've seen it in Framingham at what's called the muster field in Framingham.
I'm familiar with it.
Which is a city.
I've been there, actually.
Yes, sir. And I.
But can I interrupt you with a question? Because you're making the same points. Have you attended any of the upwards of 60 meetings over the last 2 years we've had on this subject and addressed those very points that you're bringing up?
Nothing has interested me other than those other locations that I told you about and this one.
I'm gonna be happy then to give you, and if you give me your emails or leave it with the executive director afterwards, I will give you as many hours of video conference recordings of those meetings. And I would encourage you to listen to them all and then come back next month. And because we have a big, huge agenda here. But all the points that you've made have been very, very thoroughly considered. But we don't have time to get into it tonight.
And as far as I've heard also, isn't there some sort of, I don't know if it's grandfathered in, but what is that called?
Oh, the restricted deed.
Yeah, the restricted deed.
I promise you, it's all been covered. It's on
Thank
tape
you.
in the
Well,
last couple of
I'm for
years.
seniors
Yeah,
To stay in their homes.
And they
have
will
their
be.
refurbished.
no, they will be.
I'm all in favor of that.
They
Yeah.
should all be able to,
They-
you know,
they
live
can.
happily and also, you know.
All right.
prosperously.
Thank you so much. All right, in the front row here.
Thank you. I am Carol Briggs and I am a resident of Seabeds.
Yeah,
And I'd like, if I don't fall down, to pass out something that was posted on our bulletin board, and we have a lot of seniors in my building in 40 and in 46.
two
And
of
this
those.
was for the public comment period. Now, through the ages, a lot of older people that are upstairs can't come in, read this thing, get their reading glasses, you know, just a plain old
Yeah.
daily life deal. Take the groceries up, and it was one copy on the bulletin board. I don't think there was much response, and I think it's evident with the single line printout that it wasn't sufficient. to get a response. I don't, in the line of communication, I think it failed. I talked to all my neighbors. For some reason, they're in my apartment. I want my rugs.
Let me ask Cheryl to address that.
So the public comment period, the RAB board has been working on this document since May of this year.
Right, but
So the please don't interrupt me. The
Sorry.
public comment period opens at 45 days. So it gave people the opportunity to look at this for 45 days or more and comment on it. We've met with the tenant organization as well, who has monthly meetings to talk to residents about what the RAB board has been discussing, right? And it's also posted on our website. So,
but
yeah, so we've made it known to people that this information is out there, and people have reached out and made comments not only to myself, but to Jessica, to Janice, to Sue, to other folks.
those are people that are in the know. I'm just saying
Uh-huh.
that as a posting, and I don't. I'm on the red board,
Yes,
and I
you are.
still don't think it's enough of a push to
Yeah.
get the residents.
Well, you know, we should always try to do a better job.
Yeah.
We should always try to do a better job, but,
upgrades or new policies when the tenants don't receive them.
No, it's not the job for the tenants, I'm sorry.
The
Mr.
tenants
Chair.
have the
The
right.
job is for the
45
RAB
days
board. Yeah,
to
excuse me,
review the
excuse me,
policy.
you're interrupting the meeting, please?
yeah, let's do one at a time, but go ahead.
So the RAB board, it's the mandate of HUD that a RAB board be convened, a resident advisory board that represents its constituencies, its residents. And we meet with the RAB board to discuss these matters in hopes that the RAB board will talk with their neighbors.
Well, I
About
certainly
this.
talk
Can I,
with
can I,
the
can I,
neighbors.
can we please,
Thank not,
I'm sorry, your time's up, and we don't have time to have it back and forth.
No, okay,
And I just want to say, you know, we'll try to do better, but
yeah,
I know personally that we've been trying to get residents to come to residents meetings that we've had here at Seabeds and Cook. We've had at least 4 of them
Mhm.
that I've personally attended this year. And sometimes people come and sometimes people don't come. But there will be many more meetings. But trust me, before we get to doing anything, before we start renovating anything. And so we'll try to do better to noticing. I'm open to any suggestions. Please give them to Cheryl. And are there any other points you want to bring up? Because we've got to get on the regular, rest of the
no,
general,
okay, I'm well aware of that,
because your time is a little
get
bit
some
up
of
here.
them, so
Yeah,
I will say that the 3 minutes with all the changes, just for your consideration, is short. I mean, I'm thinking
but
section 8.
it's not scheduled for this meeting. We had other meetings that were scheduled for an hour each on only this topic
Okay.
4 times.
Okay,
And it's not even on the agenda, so somebody else who isn't at this meeting, if we do something that's not on the agenda, would have a right to complain about the fact they didn't know we were doing it tonight, so.
but I thought it was an open mic period.
And your 3 minutes are up,
3 minutes.
so,
No, that's fine.
yeah. Any other comments? Yes,
Well, same thing. I want to say that 3 minutes are not enough time, okay? Maybe we should have another meeting separate, and I'm not talking the tenant organizations, but just with the tenants.
we've
Because there's a
had 4
definite
meetings.
problem here at Seabeds with communication,
Mm.
getting our documentations on time. Everything. I've got a whole list, so instead of taking their time.
Yeah.
Please review them, and we want some action.
You have got copies for
Because
everybody?
We have not been able to
You have
communicate
copies
properly
for
with
everybody? Do you have
administration.
any more copies?
No, I
Right.
have to make another
So-
one.
Thank you, Red.
All right,
So,
Thank you very much.
your turn. Go ahead.
But we need the board more involved with administration here.
Go ahead.
Mine is completely outside the box, and I agree with these folks that the 3 minutes, and I don't care, we're not on a stage. These folks have legitimate issues that need to be heard. So I'm suggesting that either you have another meeting for just that sort of thing, but anyway. I also just wanted to make sure, I know there's a review of our grievance policy coming up tonight. Am I right? Or the
It's on
review?
it's on the agenda.
Okay, right. I just wanted to make sure, as a RAB board, all four of us wanted to make sure that we would rather have a hearing officer or a hearing panel either through one of the college, law schools, or possibly through Metro West Legal Services that may know we are looking for mediation without anybody connected to a law firm or a local housing authority. That's just what I wanted to say,
Okay.
and I know Cheryl is aware of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that that is, in the,
That's very good input, and I think we'll have some more discussion on that when
okay,
we get to the that agenda, part of the agenda item here.
all right, but we absolutely have to start, I know it's a pain in the neck, but these folks as residents have a lot to say and a lot to offer.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that you will make time, even if it's only a couple of commissioners. And Cheryl, to listen up, have a separate meeting, and that's it.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. Anybody else who hasn't spoken? Jim?
Number one, I'd like to congratulate you on page 48 that you received approval as a member of the tenants organization. Could we have copies of those decisions?
Ask our fearless executive director for things like that.
So I did send it to your president, but I can make sure that the board receives a copy as well.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
And I know with these approvals, is this subject to the Attorney General's waiting? I believe her answer is due December the 6th.
What are you asking about? The tenants association?
These always approvals, are they subject to? the
What
attorney-
approval?
The approvals are listed on page 48, paragraph 1. Chair Foster, you announced that the NHA received approval from the Conservation Commission for the Linden Street Development Project, as well as final approval. And I have.
Yeah, I now understand. I understand what you're talking about. Okay.
Let me finish this. As well as final approvals from the DPW and the Needham Fire Department.
Yes.
And my question to you, Chairman Foster, is whether or not they're subject to the Attorney General's review.
So there is the Conservation Commission order of conditions that is complete and signed and will be recorded sometime in a few days, but it's not subject to any further review by anybody.
Accommodating the Attorney General.
Including the Attorney
Okay.
General. There is the zoning for building the Linden Street redevelopment project that was approved by town meeting. It's not referred to there, but I'm trying to answer the sense of your question. Yeah, that was approved last spring at town meeting. They created a new affordable housing district zoning. And that is still at the Attorney General's office awaiting approval. So it's not official yet. We have not heard back. And then there is the planning board special permit, site plan review, special permit decision, which has been approved by the planning board. And it is awaiting a 20-day appeal period. And then does not go to the Attorney General. So it's not, there's no Attorney General involved in that. The Attorney General's office is involved in approving, to my knowledge, by the way, just the two town zoning articles, and those have not yet received approval. Does that answer your question?
One question I have is concerning the planning board.
Yes,
Have you got final approval from them?
yes.
When did that happen?
It happened at the meeting of the 6th of November.
One of the questions I have on the legal notice, it only stated affordable housing. There was no mention of deeply affordable housing. And when I was at that last meeting, town council brought it up to Attorney Smart.
Yes,
And one thing that stuck in my mind, Attorney Paul Alpha said, we cannot entertain this because it's not on the original application.
yes, he said
And
that.
He said that,
Yes,
agreed. I'm an attorney, and I found it outlandish how he flip-flopped to make it a 4-0 vote. And I go back to the original legal notice, it said affordable housing. And not deeply affordable was not included.
so.
And it's a concern.
So, I'm not a lawyer either, okay, so I'm outmatched. No, but I am not an attorney, so I'm not gonna be qualified to give a, I'm overqualified, I'm overmatched here. I'm just gonna give you my understanding. And that is that, and what I know is that, Attorney Smart and Attorney Heap, the town council, worked out language that they could both the town and the housing authority could live with, and that's what's in the decision. And you can request a copy of the decision from the planning department, and they'll give you one.
What I would like is the original application that was filed.
And you can
And whether or not deeply affordable housing was mentioned.
you can request that as well.
If you could add that on the list.
It's not her list. You need to go to
It's not on my
the
list.
planning department.
You have to go to the planning department.
Yeah.
Would that be filed with the town manager first?
Planning department. Lee
My
Newman.
question was, would it be filed?
No,
with-
it was not. It was filed with the planning
with the
department.
planning
Yeah.
department? And could you give me that date roughly?
You can actually go
It's
on.
in August sometime, but I don't have the exact date.
When was it? November 6th?
Excuse me,
No, the.
planning,
approval.
please check with the planning
No,
department.
I'm asking you, Mr. Foster.
I already answered that question,
November 6th was the decision.
to my recollection, yes.
And does the clock of 20 days start at that time?
I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we're done with public comment, are we? This is
Until
great.
next time.
Well, no, I just want to say this is great.
Yeah.
This is what we want. I cannot tell you how many times I've had meetings in this room or down in the chambers over the last 15 years and nobody shows up.
Well, we want more than 3 minutes.
Well, I hear you.
Yeah,
Okay, we didn't plan for it tonight.
I know, or.
I read it, I wrote it down in red here, okay?
Separate meeting then.
Okay. All right. Or maybe something, we'll come up with some sort of suggestion, okay? All right, let's go into the regular agenda. We have a very impressive bill schedule and check warrant here. Can you please, excuse me, if you wish to talk, can you please whisper or go with the other part, because we've got here with the speakerphone. Okay. We're on agenda item A1. NHA bill schedule and check warrant of $780,764.74. Which is in your packet and along with the revised correction that went out earlier this week. I will make a motion that we approve that amount. Do I have a second? A second.
Second.
And any questions from any of the commissioners here? $750,000. Any questions going one more time from any of the commissioners?
Let's spend it.
Yeah, a lot of it's being spent on the architects, and the, other associated expenses with both the Linden Chambers redevelopment initiative and the Seabed and Cook Preservation and Modernization Initiatives. Okay, hearing no further questions, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Kenny, Ed,
Unmute.
you're on mute, okay.
Didn't want to interrupt anybody, so we put ourselves on mute.
Anyway.
Aye.
Bye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, that's 5-0. Now we have a more ordinary High Rock Homes LLC bill schedule and check warrant of $30,946.89. I make a motion that we approve that amount.
A second.
Any discussion on any of the items there? Hearing none, we'll call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Great. Now we come to the B, agenda item B, review and approve of the minutes, board meeting minutes. First, our regular board meeting minutes of September 19th, 2024. I make a motion that we approve those minutes.
Second.
Second.
Any typos or thinkos or anything else? I found a couple typos. And I'm just going to, what I did, Cheryl, is I just made copies of my chicken scratches that I'm just going to give you.
Okay.
There's also some other ones on other documents in there.
Okay.
And so
So this is these concentration policy.
no, I also did the policy, this is out of order there and there. So you'll see minutes pages in there as well.
I see, okay,
So,
great.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Penny. Yes.
Page 43,
Mhm.
the description of the cost of redoing the units at Seabed's Way and Captain Robert Cook, it says approximately $31,295. It doesn't say per unit, but it should say per unit, I think.
And you're on the
Page
Page
43.
43, sorry.
It's the third paragraph down, about 2/3 of the way
Okay.
down, it's approximately $31,295. But it doesn't
Yeah.
say per unit.
Yeah, they probably should say that.
Yeah.
Good catch. Anything else?
Yes, on page 45. The E1. At the end of that paragraph, it says Ms. Gosman and Commissioner Kirk will continue the conversation offline. And the conversation the result is that I have resigned from that position of doing the grant making.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, I will call the roll to approve these minutes of September 19th, 2024. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
I second and vote aye.
Okay, and now we have the minutes of the special board meeting that we had on 10/28/24. Was it, is that right? Is it 9/28/24?
28, 10, 28.
10/28/24, yeah. I make a motion that we approve those minutes.
Second.
Any comments or questions or tweaks? I also had some tweaks, which I gave to Cheryl. And hearing none, I'll call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Jim Flanagan votes aye.
Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Bennett votes aye.
Okay, great. All right, so we're now going to go to the executive director. Agenda item C, 2024 goals. And performance evaluation in 2025 goal setting. Did everybody receive the form and the actual goal documents that earlier this week that we set for Cheryl? It's both the 2024 goals that we approved a few months ago, and then also a 2024 performance evaluation form.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So, I just wanted to go through what our process is in summary and especially since we have a new member of the board here. And then see if we want to use the same process again, this year. First of all, we've been using the performance evaluation form in essentially the same manner for about 10 years now. I think we started it in mid 2015. And the board has found that as a very, previous boards have found that as a very, very good sort of quick checklist way of going through, the evaluation of Cheryl as our executive director for basically her day-to-day job responsibilities, as sort of outlined in the job description. It was also in the packet that I sent out earlier this week. And then it provides some, where besides, saying exceeding expectations or meeting expectations, it also provides some fill in the blank areas for sort of narrative review. The first fill in the blank area is to go through what were set for her 2024 goals, which are again in that a packet that I sent out. And secondly, areas of sort of, just call out and commend Cheryl's performance. And again, this is what you get your base pay for, meeting the requirements or exceeding the requirements and expectations of the job description. And then the third area is areas for improvement. Is sort of this normal sort of way that performance evaluations, I think, are pretty commonly done one form or another by most organizations around the country. The difference between the performance evaluation and the check the box part of it and the goal part of it is that we set the goals at the beginning of the year to sort of reach agreement with the executive director. It's not imposing on the executive director. It's more, coming to a mutual understanding that this is what the board thinks is important to focus on in this case in 2024. This is what Cheryl thinks is important to focus on in 2024. And then there's some give and take, and the document that you had in your packet I sent out, your supplemental packet, is what came out of that. And so, without going through every single one of them right now, one of the areas that we all agreed is learning how to delegate better and so forth was very important. Being a new executive director, that's often one of the hardest things to figure out how to do. Last year's goals, which I used, also included focused on staff development and staff training and so forth. And so that fill in the blank part of the goals is sort of focused on that extra, thing to focus on that would be, constitute success for the year. So of course, one of the big ones for the 24 goals that wasn't in the 2023 goals is we have had an amazing amount of preservation and redevelopment initiative stuff going on top of the regular day-to-day. You don't find anything about that in the job description whatsoever. If you look at the job description, it doesn't say one word about something that Cheryl's just been really burning the midnight oil on and has brought us to the brink of many of the successes that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes on the agenda. So that's something to note. And then the other thing that's never happened for the Housing Authority, but will start happening in 2025 is it's, at least in the world, my business world that I have been in, and I'm gonna ask Jim to comment on that because he's been in a similar kind of business world. But we were voted to have a performance bonus or a bonus awarded to the executive director at the end of 2025, up to 10% of the executive director's base compensation. And so typically what you do in companies in the private sector is you say, you know, it's tied to that goal statement that's going to be done for 2025. And it said, and again, it's all sort of, you get your base pay for doing an excellent or extremely excellent job on your, what's in that job description. And you get your, you know, and then your incentive compensation or your bonus is sometimes called different things like that, is for focusing on those things that are above and beyond call of duty. One of the ones that were in 2024 was, for example, really going through all our policies and getting those cleaned up and up to date. And you know, we will be, not tonight, but next month, sort of be commenting on that. So that's one thing I wanted to just go over. And then the process that we've always used is that we have this sort of initial meeting in November to, you know, sort of look at the way we did things last year and see if there's any changes we want to make and see, you know, we have a new commissioner, might have new insights to bring on board. We then agree this is how we're going to go. And then at our next monthly meeting is prior to that, like 10 days prior to that, each of the commissioners turned into me acting not as a aggregate, just as an aggregator, but not as a consolidator, you know, the individual performance evaluations. And those are all put together in one packet and sent out together. We also asked the executive director to do a self-evaluation, which is again, very common practice in the private sector. And then none of us get to look at all of this until just before the meeting. And that's because there was a court case, I think it was reviewing the town manager of, I forget which town now, Weston, I think, where the commissioners all got each other's opinions, you know, about what the evaluation ahead of time. And that constituted a violation of the open meeting law. You know, where, you know, that where we were collaborating or we're talking or we're getting information, thinking about things, not an open meeting. So we designed this process with advice, outside advice, so that we pretty much steer clear of that sort of an issue with the open meeting law. We have a bonging going on.
So calling.
Oh, sorry.
It's the alarm going off on talking too long, you know, so that is.
Yeah.
Your 50 minutes are up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I deserve that.
I have a question.
Wait, yeah, so I'm done, go ahead, Janice, if you want to.
It's just a quick
comment.
one.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was discussed, but when it comes to the bonus, is it all or nothing? Or can it be contingent upon goals that were succeeding?
There's not specifics in the contract. It says up to 10%, and that's at the discretion of the board.
Okay,
It can't be more than 10%. The other thing it says, just to remind everybody, and this is the reason we've never had it before, is it says it can't be paid using any state funds. And so we've always been shut out of doing that, for at least for the years I've been around here, because, you know, we haven't had this sort of bigger picture focus on what we're doing with the repositioning and the, you know, redevelopment and the preservation and everything else, so. But any questions or comments? Jim, anything?
No, I mean, what you're laying out makes sense. Want to talk timeline with the next steps?
Yeah, have you seen the same sort of thing in the private sector?
Absolutely, yeah, that just follows, you know, just looking up, trying to remember what the acronym for SMART meant. You know, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals.
And what does that mean? Oh, and how you write the
Smart
goals.
goals,
Yeah,
writing the goals and just, making sure that we've got stuff like that in there.
right. So there's no bonus for 2024 to tie to this, but it's something we will be talking about. So Penny and Ed, you've been through this several times as well, as Janice. Anything?
No,
Okay, great. So at our meeting in December, we will have the results of our individual performance evaluations and goal evaluations for 2024. And then another quirk of the open meeting law, which isn't similar to the private sector, is normally, the manager of an employee, in this case, the Board of Commissioners are the manager, and this lovely lady over here is the employee. You go into a room and close the door and you have this, private conversation on how, here's what you did to great, here are your added girls or added boys, and here's what areas you improve. You're not allowed to do that by the open meeting law. You have to do that performance evaluation in public meeting. And we've done that. It's always a bit of a surprise. Every new executive director finds that a little bit of a surprise, but it's what's required. So then the other thing we will do is to have our first discussion of what the goals are for 2025. And what we typically do is we ask the executive director, whoever it is, this case it's Cheryl, to come up with a first draft of what she thinks are the important things for her to focus on. And then, of course, board members bring in their own ideas and we have a discussion about that again in public, and either agree at the December meeting, which is, I forget, what is it, December 19th here, it's down here.
Yes.
Or sometimes we carry it over to the beginning of January for this. Yeah, so that's the process. Let's move on. We have agenda item D, the PHA 5-year plan and annual plan, taking up several dozens of pages in the packet here. Cheryl, why don't you take it from here?
So, the PHA plan, annual plan, and PHA 5-year plan are mandates from HUD. There is a public, there's a PIH notice in the packet that talks about why the plan is important and the dates for submitting the plan. Part of the plan requires input from residents. And so HUD requires that the PHA, in this case, Needham Housing Authority, form or convene a resident advisory board. And that's what we've done. We have a resident advisory board in place. It consists of Sue Biazizo, Carol Briggs, Janice Bennett, and Jessica Reese, and myself. And we've been meeting since May of this year to go over the items that are needed for the annual plan, as well as the 5-year plan, and the capital fund plan. So it's a lot. The annual plan contains, will require policy updates, and the plan lists what those policy updates are. The RAB board has been meeting, we've been going over the policies. And then, the goal is that the RAB board would then communicate with, or members of the RAB board would communicate with residents in the community about the plan and the discussions that we've been having. It's not HUD, HUD sets up the plan to have a RAB board in place so that these people are committed to the process. And our RAB board has been meeting every Monday at 11:30 a.m. since May. So we've done a lot of work on the grievance policy, the pet policy, the recreation equipment policy, rent collection policy. And they're outlined in this sheet of paper that Carol handed out. in terms of policies that are needed to complete the plan. It's a document that HUD, requires all public housing authorities to submit. What's most important to HUD and why it's taken us this long is because the process begins in May and it should be completed by October. But what's taken us this long is so that we can have enough room to hear resident comments. So we've opened the resident comment period, and I've informed HUD that we're gonna keep it open a little longer because we want residents to comment on the policy. And that's most important to HUD. So it's not that the RAB board develops policy, it rather advises on what their opinion is of the policy. And so HUD wants to see those comments, and HUD also wants to see how the housing authority responds to the comments, what the housing authority has said about the comments. So I have made a decision to prolong this process so that we can get a good commentary from our RAB board, which we have. So there will be a public hearing next month, December 21st, December 19th at the board meeting. And residents will have another opportunity to come out
What date
and
is that?
comment. The 19th is, our board meetings are always the third Thursday of the month, so
Oh, you mean
December, I said
here.
February, December
Is there
nineteenth.
anyone from Linden Chambers on this resident
Advisory board, no, this is a HUD document. It doesn't mean that a Linden Chambers can't convene a RAB, which they can. But this is relative to HUD documents that we have to submit.
Because it's federal.
Because it's
It's the
federal,
state.
yeah.
So we have no process. We could form one,
You
but
can
how
form
would we
one,
recognize?
And you can comment on the policies that we have been deliberating on. So you can, and we'll write those comments up and note where they've come from. So,
There's no reason
Yeah.
why the Linden Tenant Chambers Tenants Association can't submit formal comments.
exactly.
Like, yeah, absolutely. You
They
don't know.
didn't even know that they were convening meetings or even any of these meetings.
No, I know, you all were going through the process of, your elections and
Sure.
nominations and all of that, but this is something,
State does
that
not require.
this is-
We have to live with the policy too. don't we?
you have to live with the policies,
So I
yeah.
just respectfully
Yeah.
suggest that since we have to live by the policy,
Yeah.
we should have some input to be able to state our views.
That's, yeah, and so you have the packet.
So
that
Marlene-
has the
Marlene-
policies in it.
Marlene, you're invited.
Yeah, and you have packet.
Please do it.
Everyone.
All right, no more dialogue.
Everyone got a packet, everyone got the policy, so as you start to look at them, you can start to read them and form your questions.
Marlene,
and we can
Marlene,
talk about it.
Take yes for an answer, please.
Yes, so that's really it. It is very important that HUD hears the comments. It's not that the RAB board directs or gives directions, but HUD hears the comments. It's the Board of Commissioners that will ultimately vote on the policies.
Right.
That is their directive, their mandate. So, we've put a lot of work into this. We'll have a public hearing in December 19th at 5 o'clock. We can certainly meet before that to talk about any questions you have on the policies. Anytime you want to meet and anytime you have a question. So that's what you have here. It's really all just a review process right now. The board is reviewing, forming their questions. RAB board has been meeting since May. We're all just ready in December to vote, hopefully, on the policies. And the annual plan and the 5-year plan will be approved by the board at that meeting as well. And that will then get submitted to HUD.
That it?
That's all I have for now.
All
unless there are
right,
any
so I
questions.
would invite any commissioners or any members of the public or any other tenants association to submit any comments they have to Cheryl. I already gave you some chicken scratches of things I noticed here. And what deadline would you like to have that in terms of what's in the packet tonight?
The week before the meeting.
All right, so we got the, like, the deconcentration pack
Yes,
policy, so,
yes.
you know, take a look at that, commissioners, and please, you
Pet
know,
policy,
send that into Cheryl maybe 2 weeks before the.
2 weeks before the meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's still plenty of time. All right, we'll go to agenda item E, which is the monthly executive director's report. We have our regular various reports in there, the financial report and the management report. Any questions on those for Cheryl? Cheryl, we're then at the draft pet policy here.
Okay. Great. no
Excuse me,
questions.
what page is that?
What page is what?
What you're talking about?
Pet policy.
Pet policy is on
70.
70 to 73.
page 70. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. So pet policy.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And again, this is the work of the RAB, a great deal of comment, a lot of reading over, a lot of suggestions on what to change, what to keep. You know, it's a work in progress. It's not perfect. Any comments are most definitely welcome. But we thought we put together a good policy and, it's ready for review by the board. Any additional comments from residents, we certainly welcome that.
Can I ask a question? Or? do
Yes,
you
go
wanna-
ahead. No, go ahead and make any comments you have.
policy. The pet policy is voluminous, and I thought it was great, except it doesn't mention that there's a weight limit for four-legged animals.
Or a breed restriction.
You mean, as in, gravitational weight? Is that what you mean?
Dogs, they have to be.
Size of dog. Size of dog, then. Yeah, is that what you mean? Yeah, okay.
Or dangerous breeds like pit bulls or Doberman pinchers.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's responsible.
Those are not necessarily dangerous.
I
Those
know,
things were all
Please,
discussed in
please,
the RAB board.
please, let's not have any got back. The comment is, I think from pet, I wrote it down myself. Should we have a list of not allowed pets? Let's not get into it now, but I'm just asking.
And that came up with the RAB board. We
Yeah.
discussed that and we made decisions that are in this policy. But we'll, as I said,
Yeah.
Welcome comments.
Yeah.
If,
So you could have poisonous snakes, no problem.
no, there's a comment about that. in
Okay.
here, what type of reptiles?
Yeah, okay, all right, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So I think we've covered that.
Any other comments from commissioners at all?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Sure.
There was a few questions. It was decided by well, I can't say it was decided, but it was the consensus of the RAB board that there'd be a weight classification on the dogs. I know in the past there was a policy on the weight. And it was,
Yeah.
I believe it was 48 pounds. You couldn't have a dog that was more than 48 pounds. I don't know why it's not in the pet policy now. Somebody may have taken it out. But there's a lot of dogs that are 70, 80 pounds. And some of them are pit bull and mixed race dogs, and there's been quite a number of complaints and actual dog bites on Captain Robert Cook Drive, and I don't believe they've been addressed, and it's high time that it should be addressed, and the weight classification should be in there, especially in, considering that a pit bull mix just bit her owner's dog or her owner's arm off the other day in Roxbury. That should definitely be a consideration. Come on, let's be sensible. We have children down here. Yeah.
All right, so we got that comment about dangerous animals. Whether you don't have to be a pit bull to be a dangerous dog, that's for sure, So any other comments? I have one. It's in parentheses, I'm talking about Roman 5F. About, personal liability of other insurance is in brackets. Does that mean it was being considered and coming out, or what does that mean? It's right at the bottom, page 71.
I
Yeah,
don't know why it's in brackets, but we would like the pet owner to secure liability or other insurances to identify Needham Housing
even with a goldfish tank,
against related litigation. Or
even with a
Could flood
fish
the
tank.
apartment with a tank.
if the owner
Yeah.
thought the fish tank would be dangerous, they would consider indemnifying the housing.
Well, they say
authority.
must secure liability insurance or other insurance.
Okay, I get you.
Just ask them.
That's
I'm
a
not trying to make trouble.
Great question, Mr. Chair.
All right. All right. No, no,
Is attacked by a vicious dog.
excuse Marlene. No, you may not say that. You already made that point. And
Is the
she's
housing
taking it under,
authority-
excuse me, Marlene, please. Please.
State, who's gonna be responsible?
Yes, Sue.
From what I've read fairly recently, bully breed dogs cannot be discriminated against in a household. The only ones who can say no are the insurance companies, that they will not cover.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one.
So there's always some
Yeah.
regulation you wouldn't necessarily find.
Yeah.
But we have to look into that, but not tonight.
Yeah,
All right,
we
all
can
right.
take a workshop on this.
Yeah. Any other comments from commissioners?
But that's a good one, thank you, Commissioner.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Well, yeah, please, if anybody has any, do what I just did, which is I turned in chicken scratchings here on just some ideas to think about. All right. We are now at the grievance policy, state and federal. So back to you on that one. Carol.
Again, RAB Board did a lot of work. There's a lot of commentary on both the federal and the state grievance policy. The RAB Board, as Sue mentioned earlier in the meeting, would like the board's consideration of a grievance panel mediation deployment somehow, and not necessarily having a grievance officer, and also grievance officer tied to a housing authority or a legal company, a legal firm. So they were very adamant about that. And I did explain that the grievance officer is appointed by the board at their annual meeting, and the considerations that go into that appointment. So what I'm doing, Mr. Chair, is compiling all the comments, and then we'll have those comments from our RAB board included in our next board packet.
Okay.
And so that will help the board consider whether or not they are ready for revisions, and if so, what revisions would happen. So there's more work to do on the grievance policy. That was the most talked about, most worked on of the policies, Mr. Chair.
So, and we have the state version and the federal version.
That's correct. You have both versions in your
And
packet.
since I was around in whenever it was, 2019 or 20, when we last looked at this thing. What I recollect is, and in fact, you made me go look. That the state in CMR 760 CMR chapter 6 section 608 specifies the state grievance policy. And they were changed back then. And they were actually made us do the 2020, is it 2020 version, whatever it is,
Yes.
yeah, 2020 version. And then they didn't like what we did because we deviated a little bit from 6.08 and sent it back and made us be exactly like 6.08. And so we, just for background, their HLC or DHCD at the time is very kind of rigid about it being done only one way.
Yeah.
Like the hearing officer. So I would ask you maybe to look into that as well, and how many degrees of freedom that we might actually have. And then back then, what we also decided is that as much as possible, we wanted to treat all of our residents the same in both state and federal. So even though the federal had considerably more latitude in flexibility, as it always does at the federal level, we thought it was a good idea to just have just as much as possible the same policy that applied. So that if you're living in Linden Chambers and then all of a sudden you moved into a Seabeds apartment, it's the same grievance policy. So I just asked, maybe bear that in mind in terms of a question.
We talked about that, and I will bear that in mind, as you said. And then what I've actually done, which you'll hear more about, is develop a grievance complaint form. So that when, and this is new to the agency. So when a resident has a grievance, they would complete the grievance complaint form first. And then we have an informal settlement conference.
Yeah.
And I've had several of those, and it usually sort of works out
Hopefully,
at that level.
Hopefully.
But it's very helpful to sort of get the facts and everything in order. And it's usually resolved. But it also gets everything in order for the grievance officer.
Right.
Okay.
And then
You'll hear more
I have
about that.
one more question in terms of this issue of having a more unconnected hearing officer, hearing panel or something like that. Was there any comment about the next step, which, was in both policies, if you don't like what the grievance hearing officer ruled, whether it's an individual, regardless of who they work with, or whether it's mediation service, what about the next step that goes to the full NHA board as an appeal? Does everybody agree with that?
No.
No, they don't, all right.
No, the
So-
state actually goes to equal housing and livable communities.
No, it first goes to the LHA board, then to
No,
EOH
only the
board.
federal goes to the board. I believe the
So,
state goes to.
I'll send you a copy of the regs afterwards. I believe you're maybe not remembering them right here, so go ahead, Cheryl, though.
Yes, it sort of morphs from at the settlement conference level that we would introduce mediation. But as the conversations grew, it was concern of the board, RAB board, that they did not feel that residents could get an impartial hearing by a grievance officer who is associated with our attorneys.
No, I'm saying, and then if that's appealed to the NHA board, was there any comment about that?
No, we didn't, that was not a decisive discussion. So there was no decision, it was just taking the comments. And then there's no decision, so there's no recommendation from me on how the board will.
Well, if it wasn't considered, I think if we are looking at all this, we should look at every step, along the way.
Right, I mean, there has to be a finding.
If there's no comment, everybody's happy with the board, that, I'm not saying that's not the right answer, I'm just saying, but if people think that's the wrong thing to do, I think we should make sure we hear that.
Exactly, I agree 100%.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, let's move on to draft prohibited recreational equipment policy. Back to you, Cheryl.
Okay, and this policy is this recreational equipment prohibiting trampolines, swing sets, and pools from.
At the pools.
Okay, thank you.
Swimming pools, I
I'm
guess,
sorry, swimming pools, sorry about that.
or paddle little kiddie pools, I guess.
Yeah, I kept all of that out of there. We learned that there were some above ground pools in some areas. There were trampolines in some areas. All of this is a liability to the agency. Somebody can really get hurt. So, and this is not a revision of a policy. This is actually a new policy. And so I just bring it forth before the board's consideration. This is really kind of a no-brainer. There was not a whole lot of discussion on this policy.
Okay,
I believe there was
then-
a policy on that. I'm sorry, Ken.
go ahead, Janice.
I believe there was a policy on swimming pools. I don't want to call it the recreational. But I know there was a policy against pools years ago. Maybe 15 years ago. I don't know where it is. But a lot of things seem to disappear.
It was.
All right,
But this also includes recreation equipment, trampoline,
okay.
that kind of
Well,
thing.
we did ask our executive director and her goals this year to get through all those policies and find them or update them or create them if they don't exist here, so. Definitely, that's what we're doing here.
And then you have the rent collection policy in this
Yep.
packet as well.
Yep,
And this
I
was,
have a question about the recreational
yeah,
stuff.
before we go on, go ahead, Penny,
Raising
sorry,
my
go
hand.
ahead, yeah. Sorry, yeah,
Okay, two things. I think that seesaws, there are different kinds of seesaws. There are ones now that are more like rockers. And they should be allowed, but the kind that works on a pivot is a very dangerous. That's how I broke my nose the first time I broke my nose. So they should be outlawed, but the rocker kind is fine. However, also, the Office for Children have always allowed swings. As long as there is reasonable space relative to the length of the ropes that the swings are on. So I'd like that to be reconsidered.
you know where we need to reconsider that is in the playground design.
can I ask?
Go ahead.
question? So there is guidance from HUD and both EOHLC on the prohibition
Yeah.
of those equipments of swings. So that doesn't come from me deciding it. It really comes from the regulations from HUD and EOHLC. Why those types of recreational equipments are not encouraged, are banned essentially.
Do you know if that even applies to the renovation of a playground planning or not?
I don't know. This really applies to individual units.
Right,
Yeah, but in terms of the playground, we'd have to cross that.
because I don't remember anybody bringing up having swing sets or any kind of swing at the playground in the several meetings that we had on that, so.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
we, just something to remember.
we
when
have a
get there.
tire. I don't think we've ever had a swing.
Yeah.
We've had a tire.
Yeah, we had a swing set. We had baby
We've had
swings, Cheryl.
swings in at Captain Robert Cook, we've had swings in that playground.
So Penny, any other comments or add?
I did want to add, Mr.
Go
Chair,
ahead.
I will submit those regulations in the board packet next week.
Sounds a good idea. Yeah.
Apply to this policy.
All right. Jim, anything? All right, well, I have some pet comments I discovered stapled the wrong thing here, so,
Okay, great.
now we have a rent policy.
Rent policy. So this was approved by the board in January of this year. However, I sent it over to our legal department for their review, and they've made some revisions to the policy. A lot of it is grammar and also clarity. And the other issue that was changed is a 14-day notice. It's been changed from 30-day to 14-day because of the protocol is over, so we don't need the 30-day notice.
Okay,
But this was fully vetted by our legal team and they made some significant changes that I like a lot.
are you asking us to approve it tonight or what?
I would wait for all of the December, yeah. for the-
So
come in.
if any commissioners have any comments, do what I just did with Cheryl right now is give them to her. And
And I'll
you'll have the
incorporate that.
final
Yeah.
version for us next month.
And
Okay.
What page is that on? that you're referring to?
The rent collection
97.
policy, 97.
97.
Sorry.
All right, we are not doing the draft deceased tenant policy.
No, that's
right?
just a playhouse
All right.
supporter. We're
Any
still-
other issues or updates for us?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Now you're up again because you have a proposal for a consent agenda.
I have before you a draft, consent agenda policy for Needham Housing Authority. It talks about the purpose of the policy, which would allow for routine, items to be, or non-controversial items to, be grouped together for approval in a single motion. The policy really tonight is for your review and, would come back at our next board meeting for more comment and discussion. Almost every board in town has a consent agenda. And again, it just moves those items forward to, those routine items forward to, account for a more efficient meeting. But I just outlined some criteria that for your consideration to take into account if you accept this policy.
Any questions or comments?
Like consent agendas.
Yep, and we can try it out and see how
You
it
can
works.
always pull something off.
Yeah, right.
Exactly, yeah, so.
Yes, Penny.
I love the idea.
So, good. All right, I think we're at agenda item G, which is the Preservation and Redevelopment Initiative status update. Some of these, topics have already come up with the, resident question and comment period at the beginning, but I'm just gonna run through them quickly here so that the answers to these appear in this part of the minutes, and you don't have to have it in two different places here. Been a very productive month, very active month. The Conservation Commission did in fact sign the order of conditions and deliver it to us. The planning board did, after having a couple more public hearings, approve the site plan review special permit decision document and signed that and gave it to us. And as I noted to Jim, it's in the 20-day appeal period, and I don't know when it begins and ends, but the planning board can tell you.
Did not see that in the packet.
It's not in the packet. No, it just happened. Yes, yeah, I'm just, it's status update. It's just that, okay. That means we've accomplished all the things that need to be accomplished before submitting a preliminary application to the state HLC for their annual funding process, where they, on a competitive basis, give out all the low-income tax credit funding, state and federal, and they give out various other grants from various other programs, and they coordinate with Mass Housing that, provides the long-term loan for the project and everything else. The entire project currently for phase 1A and 1A, but not 1B, is weighing in at about $55 million altogether. So it's a lot of money. As I've said and been said by our consultants numerous times over the last 2 years, there's a shortage of money. There are projects from last year and the year before that have been approved, but there has been no money for, so they're sort of in line before us. So with no specific reason to know this, the likelihood of it being funded in the upcoming, what they call it, the winter 2025 funding round is the title, is not, certainly not more than 50% and probably very small. The process is that we send in a preliminary application by the end of this week or Monday at the latest, the 25th. And that's been being worked on in parallel here. It's called a preliminary application, so they just look at it at a very high level, just make sure that all the elements are in place. And then they give some sort of an approval in early mid-January of that. And if you get the approval of the preliminary application, you can then submit the full-fledged application, which is due something like February 25th. That's all been very promising for the doing this project. Except for the fact there isn't any funding for it, and we may have to wait a year or two or three. One other thing that happened in the last week or two is a whole group of concerned citizens who oppose the MBTA Community Act zoning that was passed by town meeting last month. Mounted a citizens petition to basically overturn the MBTA Community Act zoning articles that were approved at town meeting last month. And they turned in all their signatures last Friday. They have to get under the state law and Needham Town Charter, have to get upwards of 4,000 valid signatures of voters out of the 20,000 or so voters that there are in Needham, so about 25%. And if they can do that, then they can force a referendum, a town election, to be held where everybody gets to vote whether or not we as the residents and voters of the town want that MBTA Communities Act zoning. And you may wonder why I'm wandering off on this topic right here in the middle of a Needham Housing Authority meeting. It's because the state has indicated that they will not award any funding to any towns that are out of compliance with the MBTA Communities Act zoning requirements. And the deadline has always been the end of this year for all 100, how many communities are there? 170?
Yeah,
170
sounds about right.
communities that have a bus line or an MBTA commuter rail or a subway or something. Everybody, all those 170 communities have to be in compliance. And if you're not, they'll start withholding various forms of state funding. And guess what? One of the various forms of state funding that they are likely to withhold is the funding for the Linden Street redevelopment project. So regardless of whatever anybody's opinion is for about whether we should be doing this or not, a whole new consideration has come into play.
So they have the 4,000 votes already.
We don't know. They were waiting for the town clerk to certify the signatures, and as soon as it is, there'll be an announcement from the town.
That was on the
Yeah.
Needham Observer.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that? Is that CPC money? That's sort of.
No, CPC money is our money.
Right, exactly.
That's
So
a
what money-
that 5.5 million is not in jeopardy, but what's in jeopardy is the other 40 million from all the other states, the funding sources, So, yeah, it's, so go figure is all I could say,
So they can force a town referendum.
They can. If they have 4,000, they're matching signatures now,
And
making
if they
sure.
get a majority, a simple majority, that means.
It's more complicated than that. And it's written up, and I'm gonna maybe get this wrong, but at least 20% of the people have to vote against it. I don't know, I'm not gonna even try this. No, but there's a formula, yeah. But it'll be written up. If you subscribe to the Needham Observer, does everybody do that? I hope here?
Yep.
Yeah, it'll be all written up and explained beautifully there. And it is in today's edition. You can see that here. Yes, Ross.
Thank you. The select board has a special meeting scheduled for this.
Yep.
So they're ramping up to that.
On Monday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're expecting to find out by then. They didn't know, the last planning board meeting was Tuesday this week. And they had to spend an hour on the topic, but they didn't have the results yet.
You know that the police went after somebody who was assaulting one of the people that was taking down
Yes.
signatures.
That's terrible.
It is.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I just hope it fails and doesn't go through. Because
Yeah,
it's,
well-
it's gonna put 2 years of hard work out the
Does
window.
anybody in this room ever heard of the Serenity Prayer? I've been saying that every day. Give me the wisdom to know the difference, you know? So anyway, that's the update on Linden Street redevelopment project. Any questions from the commissioners?
I have a question, Reg. Concerning the town of Milton, they were the first to say no to
Yeah,
affordable housing. And my understanding was 4 other communities and they were gonna be on a fast track to the Supreme Court. And they were gonna be heard in the fall, and the media had said absolutely no coverage on it.
well, there is coverage, and here's where it stands, as I understand it.
Okay,
First of all, it's not affordable housing. This is workforce housing. So we do affordable housing. We do deeply affordable housing. The MBTA Communities Act does housing, you know, at 100% AMI or 80% AMI. In our town, 100% is market, right? It's 100% AMI is you're making $105,000 a year as a single person. That's not what we do,
Right.
our people do. Secondly, Milton was heard on the Supreme Court, and you can go listen to the argument that was made in front of the Supreme Court, and they're now considering it. And the Supreme Court is another, you know, wild card here. That's probably the wrong term for our state Supreme Court, but you know what I'm trying to say. But they may come out with some sort of decision that also affects the whole situation.
so it's already been heard.
It's already been heard,
Okay.
not the
Yeah,
other
you're
three
up to
communities.
date? Roughly.
I don't have the date in my head, no, but you can look it up on the internet, you'll find it.
And I don't, of the date of the hearing, but we
Yeah.
don't know the date when they're gonna.
No, they haven't
So
announced when
I
they're.
have a question. If that Supreme
Yeah.
Court comes down in Milton's favor, will that apply across the board? Or will every town have their different scenarios of why they don't want to comply?
We don't know. It all depends on what the Supreme Court rules, whether it applies just to Milton or whether it applies to the entire state. We just don't know. So,
That'll be a
all
big
right,
mess.
all right. Why me, Lord, is all I could say here. So Seabeds and Cook Preservation Modernization Project, that's been going well. So in just an order of notes I wrote down here, first of all, working with our Cambridge Housing Authority consultants, you may recollect that we discovered a few months ago that we were keeping far too big excess cash reserves in High Rock Homes LLC. They were just been sitting there accumulating every year for 10 or 15 years. And after a very complicated negotiation and very Byzantine, you know, accounting process that was run by Mass Housing, and they approved and actually sent to us, and we have in our bank account $591,099 excess reserves that are not needed to be there. There's still plenty of reserves there. This is like for replacing the roof every 20 months. 20 years. This is High Rock Homes, not High Rock Estates. So those are the new duplexes that we did in 2005, 2008. So those funds become available for the Seabeds and Cook Modernization Project. And that's good.
Wow.
Yeah, so now, and we need that because last month we reported that the program that we were going to do the repositioning had been sued, and HUD had lost the lawsuit last spring, and they were had to discontinue our participation in that program. It was called, those of you who are keeping track of the gobbledygook, is the Section 22 Streamlined Voluntary Disposition Program. And so we had a big meeting in like conference call with HUD, very high officials in HUD said, we're awfully sorry, but even though you did qualify and your application's in here sitting for approval, you have to withdraw it. We can't go down that road anymore because we were sued. And that's what the judge ruled. So we switched back to what we were approved for last February. But they also said, even though we approved you for the program called gobbledygook. Ready? Everybody ready for this one? Section 8, section 18 blend repositioning. We had to apply again, but we had to apply by the end of October. The world can somehow come to an end or something like that. And so we did get that application in with a Herculean effort by our administration and by our consultants. And just again, we've said this many times, we already, blessed this before at the beginning of the year, but by doing this, we get about $1 million worth of operating subsidy for seabeds and Cook every year today. And we have, since the beginning. And this is going to add another $1.5 million per year to that. So it'll become a total of roughly 2.5 million just by changing over to the Section 8 program, repositioning. And that's, of course, the money that we're going to use to do the preservation and modernization, because we can use that money and borrow. We can guarantee basically a conventional mortgage like any other landlord, and then that turns into millions of dollars of money that we can then use to fix up the apartments. So that's the good news on that one. However, the bad news on that one is the Section 18, Section 18 program comes with a new set of requirements called a 20-year viability test, which is not necessarily a bad idea, which is that you have to fix everything so the property will last at least another 20 years, if not more. You can't fix something that's only gone to 10 years. So an example of that would be, we recently did the boilers a few years ago on Cook, and they're gas boilers, and eventually we're going to replace them with electric heat pumps and hot water heaters is another thing. When they wore out in 10 or 15 years, well, you can't do that. You have to fix all of that up front to meet the 25-year viability test. So you actually have more renovation costs that you've got to do. And all of a sudden it gets much harder to borrow. We could have borrowed the money to do this under the other program, the Section 22 program, but now it looks like we're going to fall short. So we all remember, because we love this soap opera we're watching here, better than reality TV show, that our special board meeting was about, in part, approving a new CPA funding request to the town for an additional $5.6 million. Because we are anticipating there's going to be a gap. We won't find out that until the end of the year. Whereas last year, this time, telling the town, oh, no, we're fine. We don't need any more money for seabeds and Cook. That was, probably never say never, right? We have a strategy for making that money, but we won't know for sure until we have this analysis, this 20-year viability test analysis done, which you have to hire an outside consultant test to do. And it has a more Byzantine and incomprehensible regulations that you have to actually follow here. That led to another piece of good news, which is the Community Preservation Committee met last Wednesday and approved our preliminary application for the 5.6 million as meeting the eligibility requirements for getting CPA funds to preserve seabeds and Cook. Now, that doesn't mean they're awarding the money to us, but that's the first, that's the first step with them. There's a whole nother set of steps that have to be done between now and March and ultimately next spring town meeting 2025. But at least we're, through with the first step. Incidentally, they also approved our initial eligibility of the $150,000 study that we want to do at High Rock Estates to look at those 25 acres and say, how do we want to redevelop those? This is not anytime in the near future. It's probably 5 years away, but we have to sort of figure that out. And then that, I think, is the Seabed and Cook report. So any questions or comments by the commissioners? Or, I'd accept, some Xanax or something from somebody around here, if anybody has some extra here. Just kidding. So. Okay, we have the monthly reports from the Cambridge Housing Authority and our new developers. HSC Peabody are partners. And they are on track to get the application in for the Linden Street funding in on time. Any questions from anybody on that? Okay, I think that's it on this agenda item. We're still working on updating the budget now that we've got some more money to work with here. And we're on agenda item H, status update, Cook's after school program.
I think we mentioned at our last meeting that Jim and I would engage in sort of a study on the feasibility of the Cook's after school program. As it stands today. And that is our goal. We will continue to do that. Currently, programming in the after-school program includes pottery program that's happening there now on Tuesdays, and then Wednesdays there are tutors from the high school that come to the after-school program for students who need homework help. We've also opened that window up to students at High Rock who will come to Linden Chambers Community Room on Thursdays, should they need homework help. Now, there's no guarantee that they will do that, but we put that out there. We reserved the space for an hour on Thursdays for High Rock families whose students want homework help from the high school homework club. So that's where we are so far. I did receive a very impressive application for an after-school program manager. So hopefully we can get that person on board and they can do a lot of work. So that's all I have.
May I comment?
Go ahead, please.
I just want to give some kudos to Laurie. She's made a valiant effort to get participation in the after-school program as far as robocalls. And I've even seen her going door to door, knocking on doors. And I thought it was a good idea for the pottery program. Kids can make, little Christmas gifts for the parents and, do nice little things like that. So congratulations to Laurie on her efforts.
That's true.
Great.
A quick update.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, just had the opportunity to meet with the assistant superintendent of Needham Public Schools informally. Because it's part of what I do in my regular work, and asked about, what opportunities might be. And she has recommended following up with the director of community education for the Needham Public Schools in Simmons, and within her purview is connections with the NEDP program that services the elementary students. And then from middle and high school perspective, really probably starting with guidance counselors. So that'll be, a longer thing that Cheryl will lead that outreach, and your background with the schools will help there. In parallel to that, really kind of understand, get an updated sense of, how many students we have, what the longer term projections are for students across all of the properties. Survey the parents and families and get their sense of what their needs are. So that at the end of the day, we can put together the best of what, the Needham Public Schools might offer, what all of, through the Ross program and other elements that Needham Housing Authority can offer, with a key sense that, we're the housing authority and the Needham Public Schools are schools. They're not doing housing, right? But let's try to optimize and find out what the best is that they have to offer, some funding sources potentially for taking advantage of those programs if there is a cost, and then optimize that. And it's going to take months to figure this out, but I think it's a really good opportunity to revisit everything out there.
Good, that's good, Jim, and I want to add that maybe, they could fund some field trips for the students. And I want to say, Cheryl, you have the best, source, with, Mr. Gudikant. Right? Get
She
some
probably has
pull
his
in
cell
as far as-
phone number. Nobody else in town does, but they said maybe the chair of the school committee, but, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, are we done there?
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
let's go on to, new business, review and approval of the section 8 utility allowances,
Yes,
Cheryl.
sir. So this is something that, so sorry about that.
Sorry.
Oh, it's a shame. Sorry. The utility allowances is, an analysis that's done by a private firm. They look at what electric companies and, utility companies do in the area. And they come up with a formula that, determines, what the usage would be for, heating, cooking, electric, air conditioning, water, etc. This is for our Section 8 program and for our federal public housing families. What you have in your packet is, row house duplex, numbers, or grid, and, you have high rise, and you have several other, low rise, you have other versions. But when we're factoring, the utility allowances for our Section 8 tenants, we use this information to determine what their, utility allowance will be. It comes out every year. The gentleman that did this analysis for us, had indicated that this is going to expire in April of 2026. So this allowance will be in effect for 2 years. And what happens when a resident has a zero rent, be it, public housing or Section 8, we pay the utility allowance directly to the electric company for them. So we don't make the payment to the resident, it goes directly to the, electric company or the gas company. But these figures, change, they fluctuate because of the usage of companies in the area. And an analysis is done, and these are the numbers that you have in front of you that we would like to use going forward, for our Section 8 and public housing, families.
And you've gone through them and you understand that this company is a,
Oh,
expert in
They're
producing
very,
this.
yeah, it's an expert company, it's a
So
great
there's no
company.
reason to question that they've done a good job.
No reason to question that they've done a good job, and, they do this for other housing authorities as well. We're not behind, ours last year's expired on November 15th.
Hmm.
So, other housing authorities are chomping at the bit for our utility allowances, because those housing authorities that manage Section 8, use our utility allowance if those residents live in Needham. So if they're, and likewise, when we do our annual recertifications, we use, the utility allowance of the town that resident lives in. So Needham it's just not across the board for everyone. It's only for Needham residents. And then when we need to factor the utility allowances for Section 8 families that live in other towns, we get their schedule as well. So everyone is doing this, everyone is scrambling to get this done so that, the annual recertifications can be done on time.
Okay. Any questions?
Comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you talking to me, Rich?
Yes, Jen, sorry, go ahead,
Okay.
yeah.
I spoke to Cheryl a little bit about this, but the families, that are eligible for fuel assistance that receive it now, I think might be a good idea. I don't know who could do it or how we would do it. But to get a jump on when we're gonna convert to section 8 for the people that now have the oh, I just lost it. Fuel assistance. And how that could not be interrupted when we convert.
Okay.
Is there anything?
Yeah, that's a longer discussion. Reg would like all of the utilities to be included in our rents, but we'll bring that discussion up.
There is a policy thing that lies ahead that we'll have a public discussion on once we do the staff analysis on. And part of it's affected by the idea of putting solar panels on all of the roofs. We have very good roofs, both at Seabeds and Cook, pointed in the
Yeah, I
right
know.
direction. You know, and also the design, you know, the way they, you know, they just designed it that way, so there's lots of acreage up there for solar panels. So the question is, what do you do with that electricity that those panels generate? And, you know, it's not a simple answer necessarily, you know, but one answer could be that it just all goes, runs the meter backwards for the Needham Housing Authority, and we get a credit in cash, and we use that, for the Housing Authority. Another, answer is that it runs each of one of the tenant meters at Cook backwards, you know, and so the tenants themselves pay less, for electricity, or at least in the summer. In the winter, obviously, you know, you don't get nearly as much electricity from the winter sun. But that's something that's gonna have to be looked at.
Okay, with the addition of the new roofs on Seabeds and Captain Robert Cook, I know there was a problem with the ice dams. Has that been totally alleviated with the new roofs?
So the architects that we hired since day one have known exactly what happened in 2015. And the disaster it was, what got fixed, what didn't get fixed. And they've taken that, to my knowledge, into account. And, proposing what we have now today, which is, 100% of the schematic design for all the renovations we need to do. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I think it's been addressed.
You think? Well.
Oh, among a million issues, yes, right, so, but,
Okay.
we can take that question back to them, yeah.
Okay, I'm just
All right,
checking.
I think we're ready to, have a motion to, approve the new section 8 utility allowances. I make that motion, do I have a second? Second from Mr. Flanagan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Reg Foster votes aye.
Flanagan votes aye.
Penny's on mute, but he's looking like he's voting aye.
Ed Scheidler votes aye.
Penny Kirk votes aye.
Janice Penn votes aye.
And that passes 5-0. Now, before we adjourn, I just want to call everybody's attention to the letter from Ben Stone. Informational items in the packet and the utility vehicle quote. Do you want to say anything about that?
So this letter from Vince Stone relates to the resident service coordinator grant that we've gotten from
Okay.
the state. And how those funds will be dispersed. So as you recall, we've got the $55,000 for resident services for our state program.
Yeah,
5,000 of that is for programming.
yeah.
So this just outlines that process, that grant, and when it will start, when they will begin implementing or putting money into the account for the grant.
Any questions from the commissioners? And then one more item Carol wanted to call our attention to on a new pickup truck.
Yes, so this was in our budget, the board approved it this time last year, December of last year, the utility vehicle for maintenance department. And so we're moving forward with ordering this vehicle. I just wanted you to see the quote. We have everything in place to move forward with this Colonial Municipal Group that will fill the order for us, and we will have that budget item satisfied.
And are we retiring any vehicles, or is this a net new vehicle?
A net new vehicles, yes, a net new vehicle.
Okay, great. Any questions from the commissioners? No. Okay, and one last item. Our next meeting is going to be a special board meeting. The commissioners know I was polling you earlier this week. The reason we need it is that we've been negotiating since our new developer partner was selected in towards the end of September. An agreement called the Land Disposition Development Designation Agreement, known as LDDA, and this is sort of the initial master agreement between ourselves and AHSC Peabody Developers LLC that basically hires them to be our co-developer. We're going to be a co-developer on that, and it on a 50-50 basis. That is what they proposed, as some of the people on the evaluation committee knows, and that's held up. And in fact, they've been terrific. The biggest problem they had is believing that we were so far along the way, and now they believe it because we have these agreements assigned. So all the other fine print are in those agreements as well. There's an associated land lease option agreement too that sort of goes along with it. And the second thing we've been doing in parallel is, in order to go forward with the preservation and redevelopment initiative, the Needham Housing Authority, which is a quasi-governmental organization with a charter, needs to form a wholly owned subsidiary corporation, a nonprofit, official 501c3 corporation that is wholly owned and controlled by the Housing Authority as a vehicle for doing some of the transactions that we need to do, including some of these funding sources that
Oh.
They
Frozen.
lost us.
are we.
Um,
Their Wi-Fi sucks. Can you hear me, Penny? I see your mouth moving.
I just put us on mute again.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't hear them
I
either.
guess we've lost them. Should we, should I propose an adjournment and then we could vote on it because we have a quorum?
I guess so.
You gonna second it?
I think he might get mad. I don't know. They're ever gonna come back. Call Shovel Gosman. Oh, yeah, you lost us all.
I don't, it just dropped.
Penny asked if we should adjourn. We had a quorum.
No, you're on the phone, you're here, you can do it by speakerphone, we can hear you. So I make a motion that we adjourn the Needham Housing Authority Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm gonna go back, second that. I'll call the roll. Rich Foster is in favor. Jim Flanagan's in favor.
Ed Scheidler's in favor.
Kirk says aye.
Penny and Ed are in favor, and so we adjourn for nothing here, so. Janice,
Okay.
are you in favor?
I'm in favor. What happened now?
Okay. by technology. All right, everybody, good night. Penny and Ed and Janice, I was announcing that December 2nd at 1 p.m., 1 to 2 p.m. is our special board meeting to consider these agreements that I was talking about when you brought.
Okay,
That, yeah, everybody can make that. We couldn't make it work next week because it's too crazy with Thanksgiving.
yeah, so are we gonna receive an agenda by,
Absolutely. You'll be receiving a packet this weekend with all the documents. You know, there are like 8 documents for incorporating the NHA Development Corporation, our 501c3, and then there's another 3 documents for the LDDA agreement with Peabody AHSC. And everybody's gonna, at one